We've heard enough of that right now, thanks. Can't go anywhere. It's Gadsby's England at Euro 2020. Let's talk about what happened, and let's talk about what's going to happen.
Where's your famous? Where's your famous? Where's your famous atmosphere? Where's your
He's fundamental not only to the goals he scores, but the build-up play and everything else he brings. And I know there'll be a lot of questions being asked about him at the moment, but he's been through that 100 times before. I've answered that in this role several times in the past, and he's come up with the goals that have won us the next games, and I expect that to be the same moving forward.
Hello, yes, Gareth Southgate there, assuring us, anybody who thinks that Harry Kane is done and dusted, he's the most important player, according to Southgate, and he will be starting. I've left the weekend for everybody else to say their piece, give their view. I think sometimes if I have a knee-jerk reaction, it'll be a knee-jerk reaction. I mean, we're still sort of dissecting what happened. But the best way really to dissect and to really establish what happened is to see what happens on Tuesday against the Czech Republic. Because I think we can put this down to a derby game blip. If the Czech Republic game, England easily win or play very convincingly. The problem is that because of this, everybody's sort of hit the panic button, which is very typical with England at a tournament. You're only as good as your last result. So I guarantee you that if England sweep aside the Czech Republic on Tuesday, we'll be winning the tournament. Just, as I said before, have a snooze, wake up. England have won the Euros. Everything is not right, that's for sure. I do think there's been some serious overreaction about it. Let's break it down. England, there wasn't the work rate. Let's kind of sort of dispel this belief that England didn't want it as much as Scotland. It's not England didn't want it as much as Scotland, is they didn't know where to apply their energy. Scotland knew exactly where to apply their energy. They had a plan. England's plan when they tried to execute it, it didn't go the way they thought it was going to go, and they didn't have a way to resolve that. And everything they tried, Scotland had an answer to, mostly because let's not forget that England almost scored on several occasions. Right at the beginning, you had Stones and you had Mason Mount. Both should have scored. They should have taken both chances. England controlled a lot of possession. They had some good possession. At the end, there was a goalmouth scramble. It wasn't a good performance, but what I'm saying is that it wasn't like Scotland dominated this game. What happened was Scotland put up an extremely effective brick wall and England could not get past it. And capitalising on that brick wall, Scotland were able to take advantage of it and counterattack very well. And for long periods of the game, England didn't have an answer to that. Did Scotland really look like they were going to score? I'd give them once or twice, but it wasn't an all-out attack. It wasn't an assault on the moat. It was a good performance by an opposition that was really hungry and had a lot to prove and had to win, had to not lose, should we say. This was a wounded animal that had come to Wembley and they had no option but to go for it, to go for the throat. And not only that, we're talking about Scotland. We're talking about the old enemy. Don't play it again. Don't play it again. I see. Don't play it. There's a Scotsman over there. Oh, I'm not letting him go. Enough. Get it off. You know, I like the Scots. I don't really mind a bit of Flower of Scotland on the show. So, you know, and you even get the perfect Glaswegian draw on it. So Scotland came into this game absolutely, you know, in a way there was nothing to lose. So even though there's a lot of pressure on them, this was the game of their lives. And, you know, you had England coming off the back of a game which they had their heads held high. They had a very comfortable victory. And there was a mismatch there because suddenly you're coming in against a team which has got absolutely nothing to lose. Well, they've got everything to lose, but they've got nothing to lose by going for the jugular, by absolutely going for it. And so you have this mismatch, and very often that happens. It happened a little bit with Hungary and France yesterday. You know, Hungary had to get something out of that game. France didn't. So, you know, the onus is so much on the team that needs something that often in that case, you know, they can breathe easier. They can play that extra yard more comfortably. It's like, you know, it's like a do or die. It's sort of, you know, going into battle and, you know, knowing that there's no other battle if you don't win this one, or you don't at least not lose this one. You don't lose it. So I think you've got to take a look at the difference between, you know, the psychology of both teams and factor this in. I'm not making excuses because I'm about to slam England in a second, but I'm trying to give you some context. I'm trying to give you an idea that is perhaps a little bit different to what you might have been hearing in the media, which is that, you know, Scotland's psychology required, or a psychology was required of that Scotland team that England could not reach because they hadn't lost the last game. They weren't going into a situation where that everything was on the line. They were going into a comfortable situation, and they were probably expecting, based on the fact that England are a better team, I don't think anybody can argue with that, that they could continue the way they had been going and they could stay comfortable. But it didn't work out that way. There was this mismatch, a mismatch of energy, a mismatch of priorities, if you like. And therefore, you know, the first one won. And the first one succeeded in a way because those two chances didn't go in at the beginning. Had those two chances gone in, one of them even, I think Scotland would have been close to this destruct button because they would have had to have gone for it even more. And they would have, you know, this psychology, this get up and go psychology, all well and good at 0-0, but at 1-0, the gaps are left and you've got, you know, you're almost delirious at that point. And so England, I'm sure, would have exploited that and probably not thrash, but certainly won convincingly. But, you know, those chances didn't go in. And when chances don't go in at the beginning and the longer it goes on, then, you know, your opposition is going to start to believe more. And when your opposition also is much improved, and I think this is what else, you know, England and England fans didn't appreciate, which is that Scotland have Robertson, McTominay, Gilmore, Tierney. These are potentially world-class players. Yeah, I think we dismissed that too much. This is the best Scotland team for a long, long time. I think they are more fluid, more cohesive, more organised, more skillful. They have a much better balance, and they have this midfield that is really, really, you know, it's not a match for anybody, but it certainly can hold its own against anybody. What they miss is a cutting edge up front, as we saw. But this is a different Scotland team to any that England have played before. So, you know, I think we went in there expecting to play the Scotland we played, you know, a year or two ago, but it isn't. These are developed players now. These are players who are reaching the top of their game. They underperformed against the Czech Republic. and that was probably the opposite reason. It was probably because they felt there was that different kind of pressure on them. It was a pressure which is like, oh my God, first game, nerves, stage fright. And there's no stage fright, going to Wembley, because you can't get any worse. If you fall over in front of the audience, then you fall over, the hell with it, But the first game, there's a lot more at stake in a way, because it's the first game, and it's been 23 years since their last tournament game in France, 98. So I'm trying to sort of break down maybe what an alternative view, what you can also say, and it's not because, I'm sympathetic to the song or the Scotsman, but I just think, you just get a bit of context. It's Monday now, and having had 2-3 days, we'll put it in perspective. Everything will be revealed, by the way, tomorrow night at Wembley. If England cannot pick themselves up and they have a poor game against the Czech Republic, then yes, the second part of my discussion here, my monologue, has more weight to it. So let's look at that. Where did England go wrong? Well, having said what I've said about the problem with their not attitude in terms of lack of work ethic, but attitude in terms of their psychological strategy didn't work. What did they do wrong as far as the game's concerned? Well, I think they became lethargic when it wasn't going right. There were long periods where they weren't able to. I mean, they kept the shape, but they weren't able to string a cohesive, set of plays together. I think really it was a disjointed performance. They lost their pace, they lost their mobility that they seemed to have so well against Croatia. And then I think they got nervous. Yeah. I mean, I'm hesitating because I'm by the way, what I'm looking up, it's because I'm actually stood upside down. No, it's not. This is, oh goodness. I mean, look, this is because I've come to Gadsby's England land. I'm not in the human world anymore. I found myself here on Saturday, and I'm yet to find a way out. This is what happens when you're obsessed with the show. You get trapped in it. But other than Scotsman and a record playing Flower of Scotland over there, it's just padded walls around. So see what happens. So England's players then didn't perform because they didn't have an answer to Scotland's brick wall, which I sort of like to call it. And I just think at that point they started, then the nerves started to show, and that's what happens when what you've tried isn't working. The second thing you've tried isn't working. The third thing you try isn't working. Then it's a problem, and then you're sort of out of ideas. Question is then, is that Southgate's fault? Should Southgate have seen what was wrong and changed it? Well, he can only put more players on. The question is, was it their fault they didn't perform? Had he given them the instructions? Had they executed exactly what he said? Would England have won that game? Would they have played better? Possibly. So again, do you blame Southgate? These are the problems. There are so many more questions than answers. We can blame the manager as much as we want, and that would be the other side. Maybe he did get it wrong. Maybe he put the wrong players in the wrong positions for the wrong opposition, and maybe it was his decisions that were wrong. Maybe he looked at that Scottish team, and in the same way that we think he nailed how to play Croatia by putting out players that he believed could individually see off Croatia's players in the opposite positions, and it worked. Perhaps Southgate didn't get it right with Scotland. Maybe he thought, well, Robertson, the best player to go up against Robertson is this. I think to a certain extent it was reversed roles. I think with Croatia, Southgate is probably very much thinking about the opposition, like who do I put out there to tackle Croatia? Whereas with Scotland, and you don't necessarily blame him with this, it's more like we put out our team, let them worry about that. So yeah, I think it's quite likely that Southgate probably didn't strategize maybe as much with Scotland. And it's not criticism necessarily, because England, the onus is on England. The you know, they're the ones who are supposed to set the scene at Wembley against Scotland. They're the better team. So it's, if as a manager you're going to be less inclined to go, hey, I'm going to look at those individual Scottish players and I'm going to pick who I think can deal with those players. No, you're going to say, I'm going to pick the best English players, my best England players, and let the Scots worry about that. So, you know, and that's fine, as I said, probably if England had taken the lead. But when they didn't, their roles then have to be different. Their roles then do become about, hey, wait a minute, we need to look at what these Scottish players are doing individually and nip that in the bud. And that's where England did come undone a bit. Whether Southgate could see that, and whether he should have then changed things earlier. It's easy. Who changes, their team? Who brings people off the bench that quickly? This is the problem with a football match. You've got 90 minutes. You've got to give the players 45. Nobody, or very rarely, makes, first half substitutions unless it's related to injury. So, I think there isn't that much time to do that. I mean, the cries for Grealish. Yeah, I mean, Grealish did come on, and he did very well, but he didn't turn the game. We didn't score. He won some very useful free kicks. He showed a lot of, his incredible skills, but he didn't turn the game. I mean, he had 20, 30 minutes. So be careful when you say, oh, if Grealish starts, we'll be fine. Not necessarily. Maybe, not necessarily. I mean, we have a world class. I mean, everybody's talking about Sterling or Grealish. I mean, personally, I think if you play Grealish, I would be almost tempted to replace him with Foden rather than Sterling. I still believe in Raheem Sterling. I still think he's been the best English player since the World Cup. You only have to look at his performances, in Spain against Croatia. So why should he be dropped? It's been 2 games. The first game he was excellent. The clamour now to drop him because of that, it's just ridiculous. And he was no worse than anybody else. They were all under par. They weren't bad. This is the thing. They weren't bad, England. They were just They just seemed they seemed like they didn't have energy. That wasn't what it was. It was they didn't have an answer how to play Scotland. I think, perspective. That's what I'm talking about. But, England made a lot of mistakes. They didn't, they didn't assess probably the game enough during the game. It's the old plan B. They didn't change enough when things went wrong. They didn't adapt. And that is going to be a problem for England. If you want to know what I do worry about with England, it's adapting. It's the same old problem. It's a similar problem. It was the old Ericsson plan B. I feel that even though England players absolutely have the talent and the ability to adapt their game, I think they're shy. They're afraid to take that initiative mid match. And what's the best way to put this? It's late, but it's here. Euro 2020 and 2021, and Gadsby's England is still the place to come for all your England news throughout the tournament. Follow the drama, the ups and the downs. There's going to be plenty of them. Euro 2020 on Gadsby's England. Alter their tactics, their strategy, their maybe players, and that's what worries me. And it's not because they can't, it's because they're afraid. I think that with Croatia it worked. what they set out to do worked? What happens if it hadn't? Do we have the players who have the initiative and the cojones to change things and translate that and communicate that on the pitch? Do we have a manager who is willing to crack the whip and say, right, I know what's wrong here. I'm going to fix it by doing this, either by sending instructions out or by changing the players. I believe in Southgate. I believe Southgate showed on several occasions that the answer to that is yes. But I don't necessarily know if it will work, in this tournament. So if England come under extreme pressure against the Germanys or France's, etc., will the players and the manager have the answers in time over 90 minutes? Will they be able to fix it in the length and the time span of a football match? I mean, that's the problem. On hindsight, probably they're all sitting around saying, oh, that's why we didn't beat Scotland. That's why we didn't beat Scotland. Football management and football is, no matter how much skill you have, no matter how much energy, no matter how much purpose and dedication you have to the match, you have to have an intelligence. You have to have the brains as well to identify where things aren't going right and change what needs to change so that they do. And that's clearly what didn't happen against Scotland for whatever reason, and what has to happen from now on. Otherwise, we're going to slip back into the terrible, terrible, nightmarish world of mediocre performances and early exits. I mean, really, that's the danger here. And I fear that. I do fear that. I can't tell you I don't have that feeling. I do have that feeling. I do worry right now. If you told me about this dreaded last 16 game against, looks like France or Germany, I have no confidence that we would beat either of them. But that's an emotional reaction to what happened on Friday. Probably if you asked me the same question on last Monday after Croatia, it would have been different. So all we have is this game tomorrow night against the Czech Republic, which again, are they going to, I'm sure he will go out there to win it. But, supposing he goes out and they don't play to their best, or he puts a second string team out there, and then we're no closer to realizing, what we can and cannot do. But, I think they've got to go out and perform really well and give a performance that's going to satisfy the fans. That more than anything, if that happens, then, we can go into the knockout stages with some more confidence. So disappointing, not dreadful. No red button yet. Worry about the red button in a week. But for now, just, it's just, the talk shows and the call-ins and the get rid of him and the never play Harry Kane again nonsense. Mr. Lineker reminded us that in 1986, he had two terrible games, the first two games of the World Cup, one which England lost and one which England drew. And then he scored a hat-trick in the third. I'm not saying that Harry Kane's going to come out and score a hat-trick against the Czech Republic, but in terms of like dropping somebody because they have two bad games, unfortunately, it happened to be in a tournament. No. And he was part of a team that won on Sunday against Croatia. England have the same number of points as France have, 4. They've had more difficult opposition than many other teams with 4 points. They've had the World Cup finalists and a resurgent Scotland playing in a derby game where you would normally say if Liverpool play Everton, if Manchester United play Manchester City, if Arsenal play Tottenham, the form book goes out the window, right? What happened to that? There is all these things are questions to be asked against the negative conversation that's going around right now. Those are the questions and the points that you can make against those who say England are terrible. On the other hand, to those who say, no problem, it's just a blip, it's just a derby, doesn't matter. No, there are questions that need to be answered. The Harry Kane issue needs to be solved. Why is Jadon Sancho has one of the best records in Europe not being used. Should Grealish start in place of whoever, Sterling or Foden? Why are we not getting the best out of Mount and Foden? What's wrong with Luke Shaw? Again, is there anything wrong with Luke Shaw? I'm just, I'm saying that to each side, there are legitimate questions. But unfortunately, the only answers to those questions will come on the pitch. So what I'm basically saying is that England drew 0-0 with Scotland on Friday night, and they're going to be playing the Czech Republic tomorrow night. That's all we know. We don't know anything else. There isn't enough yet to suggest a pattern. So in Euros 2016, there was a pattern. From the very first game, England were pretty awful. Even the game they won against Wales, it was so scrappy, wasn't it? I mean, the writing was on the wall. The same in 2010. They were appalling from start to finish. So, England won their first game. It was a good performance, and they had a tricky time in their second game. So the third game is going to should give us a big indication. My hesitation is that because it's, both sides are, for all intents and purposes, are through, will Southgate not play for first? And I know there's a lot of you out there saying don't play for first. I don't know why, because you've got France or Germany in the last 16 potentially, maybe even Hungary if they beat Germany in Munich. Why not? What did they call when Germany beat Hungary in the World Cup final? I think it was a miracle of Bern. Well, Hungary owe them one. Miracle of Munich, right? Bound to happen. So just beat the Czech Republic and it'll be Hungary at Wembley next week. What's the problem? But if we don't do that, if we come second, we're still going to face the winner of Group F for F in the quarterfinal, which is going to be France or Germany. So that's going to be in St. Petersburg. So do you want them at Wembley in the last 16, or do you want to have that one extra game probably against Sweden or Slovakia? Although it could be Spain, because Spain had not done anything. They could well come second in that group now. We did this at the World Cup, and yes, I'm glad in a way because we all wanted to stay in Russia longer, of course, but you can't put this off over and over and over again. Okay, if we win one more match and we delay the inevitable with France, Germany, Spain, Italy, we delay. Let's not win this game so we can have a Sweden or a Poland. Let's push that horrible one back one more round, because maybe in one more round we'll be better. We'll be able to take them on. I mean, yes, teams grow into tournaments, but come on, we're going to have to do the thing that nobody wants to face, the horrible, horrible thing, which is we have to beat one of the elite teams. We're going to do what we've not done since 1966, the World Cup final. I mean, that has got to happen. So part of me is like, get in there. And if we go out in the last 16, so be it. The recriminations, the autopsy, whatever, we'll deal with it. Just get in there. I don't think a quarterfinal place and going out in the quarterfinal, especially with COVID and having to have all these poor fans travel to St. Petersburg, I almost would rather just test ourselves against the best as soon as possible. Because if we do beat France or Germany in the last 16, I give us every chance to win this tournament. So, as much as I probably will eat my words as England and Germany come out the last 16, I'll be like, oh God, why did I say that? I don't think so. I think, just try and win everything, really. It's that's sport, isn't it? Anyway, those are my thoughts. I took a couple of days and I didn't have anybody on here because I wanted to monologue this one. I wanted to, sort of stream of consciousness this one. It's probably a crappy show, I'm sorry. That's why I've put this pretty background behind me. It's so close you can almost touch it. Look. Can you imagine Harry Kane's hand? Hey, my hand's not working. And he lifts it up into the London sky. That's it. I got it. That's it. Up. Can't quite get that shape right. Just imagine that. Imagine the Gadsby's England sign being lifted up to the gods. Look at that. Which one would you prefer to lift if England won the European Championships? All right, everybody. I always forget to do this. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. like, subscribe, thumbs. There is one like that, but don't do that. Apparently that means bad, so stick it up. Website, gadsbysengland.com. I wrote a little piece about the Scotland game, so, read that, see what you think. Facebook.com/Gadsby'sEngland. YouTube, of course, which hopefully you're watching this on, Gadsby's England channel, and Twitter, which is just Gadsby's England. By the way, no apostrophes in all of this. Just like, I love doing this. Look, see if I can get it right in there. No, yeah, there you go. No apostrophe. Why is it getting jammed? There you go. No apostrophe. You can imagine that. It's like everything is Gadsby's England squashed together. No punctuation. That's the kind of show we are. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Don't panic. Czech Republic on Tuesday. Deep breath. You knew it was never going to be easy. It wouldn't be the same if it was easy. You signed up for the England football team by birth, I guess, but just let's see what happens. Thanks very much for listening. We'll be back with full coverage of that game. I'm not sure if I'm going to be at the game yet. I'm trying to fix that one desperately. So coverage as much as we can of that game. We'll see how it goes. It's a tournament and never know what's going to happen from day to day. Take care. Thanks for listening. It's late, but it's here. Euro 2020 and 2021. And Gadsby's England is still the place to come for all your England news throughout the tournament. Follow the drama, the ups and the downs. You know there's going to be plenty of them. Euro 2020 on Gadsby's England.